Friends, today we are going to talk about another system, the nervous system. However, before I enter into nervous system, I would like to recapitulate a little bit about what is a system. You will be knowing system is a group of organs, and these organs must have similar functions. Correlating this with the nervous system includes the organ brain, spinal cord and nerves. And its function is to pass impulses from the periphery to the brain and from the brain to the periphery. The impulse that goes from the periphery to the brain is called the stimulus, and the impulse that goes from the brain to the periphery of the body is called the response. So in one sentence, nervous system includes the brain, the spinal cord and the nerve, and it helps to pass stimulus from periphery of the body to the brain and response from the brain to the periphery of the body. This is done so that all physiological functions of the body can smoothly be carried on. Now let's go a little bit in depth into the nervous system. I was talking about the brain, the spinal cord and the nerves. Now, all these three, brain, spinal cord and the nerves, are made up of certain cells which are very specialized cells called the neurons. These neurons, like any other cells, have got the cell body which includes the cell membrane, the cytoplasm and the nucleus. However, in addition to these, they also have got a long extension which is called the axon and shorter extensions called the dendrites, which you can see in the particular diagram that is in front of you. So the neurons, nerve cells, they have got the cell body, axon and dendrites. Getting in depth more into the nervous system, you will have to understand that our body has got the nervous system spread all over. First is the central nervous system, along the center of the body, including the brain and the spinal cord, which is very, very important. Let's get a little bit in depth into the central nervous system. But before we do that, I would like to point out to you the other nervous systems that are present in the body includes the peripheral nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. Let's have a look into the central nervous system. The central nervous system includes what you can see here, the most important organ of the body, the brain. Now let's look ahead into the brain. See, if you look into this diagram, the one on the top looking like the helmet is the brain. And see an orange cord running down from the base of that helmet or that brain, that is called the spinal cord. And the spinal cord you find runs inside the spine. So you see the vertebral column. The vertebrae is placed one up above the other, and that is the vertebral column through which runs the orange colored cord-like structure called the spinal cord. And up there inside the cranium or the skull, you find the brain. Brain, in fact, schematically looks something like this. Brain is found inside the cavity of here, and this cavity is called the cranial cavity, which is covered by the cranium or the skull. This brain, which is found in the cranial cavity, has got 5 parts. The largest part right on top there, cerebrum, that's the largest part. The yellow part which you can see is called the cerebellum. You see a central part, yellow part, the mid part of the brain, which we call is the midbrain. The midbrain is the central part. You see a swell part just below the midbrain, that is called the pons. It's the pons. And the base of the brain here, you see it's called medulla oblongata. The base of the brain, medulla oblongata. So the brain has got 5 parts inside the cranial cavity. That is the cerebrum, the largest part, cerebellum, midbrain, pons, medulla oblongata, which is called the base of the brain. Carrying forward, you can see all the 5 parts here. Right. Now we move forward. Cerebrum, we said, is the largest part of the brain. It has been divided into 4 lobes. One in the front, frontal. Behind the frontal, parietal. Behind the eyes, it is the occipital. And in the temple region, temporal. So 4 lobes of the cerebrum: frontal, parietal, occipital, temporal. As you know, brain is a very delicate organ. So the brain is covered apart from the cranium. The meninges is present. The meninges has got 3 layers. Dura mater, the outer layer, dura mater. Middle layer, arachnoid matter. And the inner layer, pia mater in the inside. So these are the 3 layers of the meninges. It doesn't end here. Between the pia mater or the pia mater and the arachnoid matter, there is a fluid called cerebrospinal fluid, abbreviated as CSF. So cerebrospinal fluid, abbreviated as CSF, between the pia mater or pia mater and the arachnoid matter. The question is, what do they do? As I was telling you, first and foremost thing, they act as shock absorbers in case of some shocks coming into the brain. So it helps in protection. Apart from that, the cerebrospinal fluid is very, very important to give nutrition to the brain and removes waste product away from the brain. So that is the covering of the brain called meninges. Nerves are an integral part of all nervous system. The central nervous system has got 2 types of nerves. The cranial nerve, as you can see from the name cranial, these are nerves which start from the brain. They originate from the brain. There are 12 pairs of cranial nerves. One thing which you must know is very important, is the 10th cranial nerve called the vagus. And vagus is involved with 3 very, very important systems: the heart and the cardiovascular system, the lungs or the respiratory system, and also the digestive system. So if you really look into it, vagus is very, very important. It's the 10th cranial nerve, 1 pair of vagus. Apart from that, there are another 11 pairs involved as cranial nerves. Apart from the cranial nerves, the central nervous system has got the spinal nerves. As the name suggests, spinal nerve means the spinal nerves originated from the spinal cord. 31 pairs of spinal nerves are present in the human body. So this, in short, crisp, is the central nervous system. So I've touched upon brain, spinal cord, parts of the brain, covering of the brain and the spinal cord, the meninges, and also the nerves involved in the central nervous system. With this, we now get into the second kind of nervous system, that is the peripheral nervous system. You will understand from the word periphery, these are the parts of the nervous system which is away from the central nervous system. The peripheral nervous system is involved in passing impulses from the periphery of the body to the brain, which we call as a stimulus, and also response, that is the stimulus. After it goes to the brain, the response brain has to give. This response is the impulse that goes from the brain to the periphery of the body. These are carried by different kinds of nerves. One which carries the impulse to the brain from the periphery is what you can see from periphery to the brain with the yellow arrow moving there. These nerves are called the sensory nerves or afferent nerves. Sensory or afferent nerves carrying the senses. Apart from that, the other one that we have is called the one which is now shown here with the red arrow running there. It's called the efferent or the motor nerves. The efferent or the motor nerves. What they do, they carry the impulses from the brain to the periphery. From the brain to the periphery. This is called the efferent nerves. There are certain parts of the body which do not have this advantage. There you get the third kind of nerve called the mixed nerve. Here you see on the right hand side the mixed nerve. Mixed nerve do the function of both the sensory nerve as well as of the motor nerves. So in short, there are 3 types of nerves in the peripheral nervous system, sensory or afferent, carrying impulses from the periphery to the brain. Second one is the motor or the efferent, carrying impulses from the brain to the periphery. And there are certain nerves which do both functions. They are called the mixed nerves. So this, in short, is about a part of what we are calling as the peripheral nervous system. Now, when we look forward, what we find over here is the impulses are being carried from the periphery to the brain and brain to the periphery. Now, who carry them? It is the nerves. And the nerves, as I told you, are made up of nerve cells. So, you must be thinking that the nerve cells are joined together. It's not like that. There are gaps between nerve cells, which are called, here you see, the synapse in the blue. So this synapse is a gap between the nerve cells. So the question is, then how do the impulses go from the one nerve cell to the other? So, being a gap called synapse, here the impulses, whether it is from the brain to the periphery or the periphery to the brain, are carried with the help of certain chemicals which are called neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters help in the process called neurotransmission. Now these chemicals include GABA. The other one, what is very common, is acetylcholine, etc., etc. So these are chemicals which help the neurotransmission through the synapse. So this about the synapse and the neurotransmission. Therefore, in peripheral nervous system now, we have discussed neurotransmission, and before this, we have talking about three different kinds of nerves: sensory or afferent, motor or efferent, and mixed nerves. So this is about the peripheral nervous system. However, we don't end the nervous system here. Further ahead, we see one more kind of nervous system, the third one, which is the autonomic nervous system. This autonomic nervous system, as you can see here, includes two kinds of nerves: sympathetic nerve and parasympathetic nerves. Look at a certain noise taking place. What happens? We get a bit disturbed, right? So at that point in time, what happens? If you feel the heart is beating fast, you see the blood pressure, it has gone up. If you look at the eyes, the pupil has got dilated. This is all done by the sympathetic nerves. After some time, the reverse happens. The heart rate becomes normal, the blood pressure becomes normal, the pupil do not remain dilated. These are done by the parasympathetic nerves. So if you have looked into it, sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves have got opposite functions, and they are involved with the autonomic functions of our body through the autonomous nervous system. Now, these two nerves are involved in something which we call is a reflex action. Reflex action is what? As I was just now describing, it is an automatic response to a stimulus. Like when there's a boom going on, a sound coming in, suddenly there is certain response on our part, which is automatic. So that automatic response to a sudden stimulus is called the reflex action. So basically, this about the autonomous nervous system or the autonomic nervous system. So in short, we have covered the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system, and the autonomous nervous system. I'm sure you will be confident now to talk to anybody on the nervous system. All the best of reading to you. Thank you.